Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third up and running with new eVA training session. Excited to have you all here. It is slightly different with the eVA delay, so we'll kind of take that as we go. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. So real quick, here is our agenda and the topics we are going to cover today. A majority of the session will actually be in demo and talking through the different processes you all will complete in new eVA once we get access. So really the objective for this training is at the end of the training, you all will be able to describe high-level processes to use the new platform at Go Live. We know after Go Live, there's going to be changes, there's going to be enhancements. So this is going to be a continuing process where we'll have trainings with you all to kind of talk through issues and enhancements. And also our training materials will be updated to accommodate those changes as they come into the platform. So the current timeline has changed. As you all are aware, Monday was a little bit of a shock to, I think, everyone here. We're thankful there is a delay. We're hoping that will kind of mitigate a lot of the end of the fiscal year purchasing issues that we're running into. Just keep in mind that with this delay, we will still have the timeline impacts with cutoff windows as we have had the last two times. So eventually when the new date is established, we will have a requisition cutoff to ensure your items get into the platform before it goes offline. Because if it hasn't generated a purchase order, even with this delay, a requisition won't be converted. But keep an ear out and an eye out to your email and then any other communications we send out in the future. We're hoping early May, we'll have some updates from Richmond about the new timeline and where things are headed on that front. So with that being said, support for new eVA, once we get there, one of the biggest ways we're going to provide support for you all is on-demand support sessions via Zoom. That's going to allow you to join when works best for you. You don't have to come to our office or a computer lab.
No, it's not. I keep mine off.
And then from there, you don't have to sign up. You can pop in when works convenient if you have questions, if you want to enter a requisition and have support during that process. Our plan will be once new eVA launches to offer that type of support at least 3 days a week for the first probably month. And then we'll back off as needed, probably to 2 times a week for the following month. But we'll see how things go once we get there. Big thing to keep in mind once we get there and as we approach the new date, Ask eVA, email address and phone number is your best way to get an answer and a response. Once we actually get back into the weeds with new eVA, a lot of us on my team are going to be really busy with those activities, and our individual mailboxes are only monitored by one person. So as much as possible, try to funnel to Ask eVA. If it's a more difficult question or it needs someone else to look at, I promise they'll get it to the right person. But that's the best way to get a quicker response. And if you haven't seen it, our eVA updates page has a lot of information. If you're newer to JMU and you've missed a lot of previous eVA updates, our Communications to Campus archive has every email we've sent about new eVA. More information as we get it will be here as well. I have frantically updated this page based on the delay. So there's more information out here. Our eVA on-demand support sessions will be available here as well once we have those available. And then our transition guide, which I'll talk about next, is also out here. As we make updates to the transition guide, that will be posted there. I'm sure there will be at least a version 2 by the new go live date. The plan was to have that ready for you all by May 9th with the old date. So just keep an eye on that. The current version covers pretty much everything. There's some items we're going to have to go back and adjust a little bit, and a couple concepts we're going to have to explain out because we're waiting on updates from Richmond at this point. So please do review the version 1, but don't print it out just yet because there are going to be enhancements soon. So there we go. All right, changes. So some of the big and most notable changes that are likely going to still be in place at Go Live. So your credit cards no longer going to be defaulted. So on a requisition, you're going to have to manually go and select it. I'll show you what that process looks like here in a little bit. You can't modify your small purchase credit card in the platform. So if you need to make a change, you get a new expiration date, you're going to have to delete out the card completely and then react. Good news is those changes happen live, so no more overnight upload and having to wait. And for those of you that share your small purchase credit card with the association process in the platform, that option is gone. There's a new way to handle that, and I'll show you what that looks like. It's a little bit more involved, and it's going to be each time you need to use that card. And as a reminder, so there's going to be some prefix changes. So anything that would be an EP today will become a PO. If it's a PR today, it'll become an REQ. And those will also be renumbered if they're converted. So anything last 2 years is going to be converted into the new platform. The old EP number, the original EP number or PCO number or PR number is still valid, and we can still search it and find it. But if you make changes, that'll be a different process. And also keep in mind your PCO will stay a PCO, but it will also be renumbered. So for example, if you have a copier lease, you can still use your original EP number, even though there will be a new PO number on the platform. Other things, requisition comments. Today, there is one location, and there is a toggle checkbox you select to make it visible to supplier or make it internal only. There's now 2 different locations to handle that. So if you need to make a change, you'd have to move that comment to keep it internal or make it visible to suppliers. Requisition attachments, exact same thing. There is a different upload process for it to be internal or supplier visible. There's no longer a checkbox. So if you upload something internal and actually needs to be visible to supplier, you're going to have to re-upload those or download it and then delete it and then re-upload it. But again, we'll talk about that here shortly. Known issues. Vendors might not get your orders electronically. So the platform suppliers use today, the current eVA, Ariba is leaving. It will truly be just through their eVA supplier account. With this delay, hopefully more suppliers will be aware of what's happening. But just keep in mind that even once we go live, even with this delay, some suppliers may not get your order because they just won't be aware. So if you don't hear something, the good rule of thumb will be to follow up with that supplier and ask the question, did you get this? Non-catalog requisitions are going to have a warning message. We're just going to have to ignore it. We've asked for that to be fixed, but that's not something they're going to do for us. And then line item attachments, we're going to ask that you not use them. They do work, but part of the problem is you have to follow a very specific sequence of events for them to save successfully. And the other piece, if you have multiple line items attached, multiple line items, and you add an attachment, there's no indication for us in our office or suppliers that there's an attachment buried in there. Because right now there's a paperclip icon that lets us know. So we're going to direct you to just use header level attachments. All right, supported browsers. This is very similar to what we have today. Chrome and Firefox are your best options. Part of that is some of the suppliers and their Punchout catalogs. If you're a Mac user, please, Firefox or Chrome are your best options, okay? All right, now what you're all here for. Let me go ahead and go back. Sneak on over here to the actual eVA platform. So welcome to new eVA. Once you sign into the platform, this is where you'll land, the buyer portal as it is today. And we're going to start off with a Punchout catalog order. So to do that, it's a little different from today where you start out with creating the requisition and filling out the header information. We're actually going to go right here to shop from the nav bar and then search products. It's going to think for a second. Now in here, there's a lot of different groupings. Mandatory sources at launch will not be anything that we have set up. It may be some Richmond specific ones that don't apply to us. If and when that changes, we won't let you all know. There's a lot of other information down in here. The easiest way to get to where you need to go for a punch out is to come to this little funnel to filter. I'm going to come down here and select punch out only, and then select search. right, now once we're here, there's many pages, 110 today. So you're more than welcome to browse. You can go page by page, but if you know where you're going, for example, for this demo, we're going to do TSRC. We can just key that in and hit search. All right. If for whatever reason I had typed that in correctly or TSRC didn't show up, I could just hit this X here and then search again to look for the actual supplier I needed. But in this case, supply room's here. And then once we do find the Punchout catalog we want, we're going to click this cart and globe button here. That's going to push us on over. All right, now we are at the supplier's website. The only real difference here, if you're a regular Punchout user, that eVA bar is gone. So it's not as clear anymore that you're navigating there from the eVA Punchout. If you needed to get back without shopping, you would hit exit here and that would take you back. It's going to vary from vendor to vendor what that process looks like, but you can also do the back button here. But again, if you do that, anything you've done in the Punchout catalog will not be transmitted back. So for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to add a lot of pins to the shopping part. Okay, got some items here. So we're good. So we're going to submit the cart back. We've got a quick splash screen here. And then now we're back in the requisition with our items. So let's talk through this new screen. So the first thing you're going to notice is now instead of title, it says names, the name of the requisition, same concept as the title. So we're going to key in the vendor. Okay. Something new on this field is organization. This field has always existed in eVA. It's just been behind the scenes of the platform. It's just, we use it here to group individuals based on your division or some subunits, like facilities management has their own subunit listed out here. There's not anything you need to do here, and it will default to the division or subunit you are assigned to today. So you can just bypass that field as long as it's filled in here, you're good. Purchase is the type, we'll leave that alone. We'll talk about that more here in a little bit. PO category, not anything new here. This is going to be an RO1. Requester, that is the current today on behalf of field. We'll leave that alone. I am playing the part of Doug Piker for this demo. His account in this instance is set up as a requisitioner, which is the account type you all will have after we go live. Reference field is for converted purchase orders. You'll never need to type anything here. Our procurement transaction type, that is not anything new. We're going to do supplies, not technology. This will apply for change orders we need to do on converted purchase orders. We'll have more information on that later on in the version 2 of the transition guide. Okay, so at this point, and something new concept to be familiar with, we're going to go ahead and hit save. And this, once we hit save, note what this says right now. Once we hit save, that's going to update with that new name. Okay. So traditionally, like we do today, the next thing we need to do is set up our department and account codes for these line items. Process is a little different. So there's a mass edit, select all button, and you're probably thinking, I'm going to hit edit lines. We're not going to do that. Edit lines is a little different concept. You're just setting your department account code. You're actually going to go to set allocations. That's what it's called now. And then I'm going to hit this plus allocations button. I'm going to get a new row. Now I could add as many allocations rows as I needed to if I wanted to split out the percentages across department account code amongst all of those items. But in this case, I'm just going to do one. So we're going to set it to 100%. The fiscal year is now down here in the allocations area, and you'll need to manually set that one, fiscal year 22 right now. The nice thing is if you know the number or the name, you can key either one. So in this case, I'm just going to start typing procurement. And it is a quick search functionality, so it's a lot easier than today. You don't actually have to click see all and search for it anymore. It'll do a live search as you're going. And then we'll do the same with office supplies. And there it is. But again, if you know the codes, you can key that in as well. This we're going to leave blank. Organization is just carrying through from the header, and you don't need to modify that. Once we're happy with it, we're going to apply and close. All right. Now, let's say that one of the line items we wanted to use a different department code on. So I'm going to click this box here and then select it again to deselect all. And let's just pick this last line item. We're going to set allocations again. And that's going to allow us, we're going to walk through the process again. 100, our fiscal year. But this time I'm going to do a different department. I'll select it, there we go. And office supplies again. And then apply and close. So that's going to be how you would set multiple department or account codes. You can select the individual line item or line items that you need to set differently. Good rule of thumb, it's going to be better to set all of them and then go back and modify the ones you need to, because much like today, if your allocations are not set, you will get a blocking error message and it will not let you submit it forward. Okay. So the big change here, as you've probably noticed, if you're looking, the option to use P-card is not on the header screen anymore. So you're going to navigate over here to this tab, P-card, and then if it's minimized, it's just going to have the icon there. So we'll click P-card. And then you'll hit the drop down. Doug has a P-card, so we're going to select it, and then you're going to hit save. All right, so the P-card is on there. Now we're going to go back to the requisition. So let's talk through a couple of things here. So let's scroll on down. So here's all, of course, all of our items and services. Now that we've done the allocations, we can see that information. Just something to note is that the actual unique number doesn't carry over on this view. It's just going to show the name. So if you want to see that information, you have to go back into that line item. This is the attachments area for the whole header, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Here is the internal comments area. It's not been turned on fully yet, but this is where you would put internal only comments. Still public record, but it wouldn't be transmitted out to the supplier. Now, if you wanted to do supplier visible or PO print comments, much like our JMU's only ones today, that's up here at the top. Let's go ahead and type one. Okay. So at this point, we can submit it on, but let's just say we're curious about where it's going next, because maybe I have some approvers that need to approve it before it's going to generate a purchase order. So you're going to look to this workflow preview and ad hoc button. And this will show you before you submit the requisition where it's going. So in this case, buyer manager, that title is going to look a little different when we actually go live. That's going to be the new buyer inbox that you may have seen before where it comes to our office for review. And some of these names are not JMU staff. But that just gives you a sense of what that's going to look like. Once any needed approvals are completed, there will be a green check mark here. And then just something else to note, these are all the individuals that can approve it based on that type. It doesn't mean everyone in that list needs to approve it based on that type. So only one person in the buyer manager type needs to approve it. It doesn't need to go through that full list. So don't get panicky if you see 20 people when we go live needing to approve your item. That's truly just one of us in that role needs to approve it before it'll move forward. So we'll close this and then go ahead and hit submit for approval. All right, so it's off and it's waiting for approval. Once it's approved, we'll be able to get the purchase order for it. And we'll actually get an email notification once that purchase order has been requisition's been fully approved and has generated a purchase order. So we're gonna hit the eVA logo in the top left to go back to the buyer portal. And then we're gonna move on, excuse me, to a non-catalog. So a little bit different process here. We're actually gonna go to procurement first and then create requisition. So now we're starting out similar to how we do today. You've got to do the header first. So let's give it our name here. Okay. And I won't talk through the fields we've already talked about here. Okay, and then again, of course, we're going to save this. Now, what's different here with anything that's not a punch out is that you're going to see create requisition before you hit save. There is no number yet. The number is not generated, that REQ number, the new PR, until we hit save. So let's hit save and you'll watch what changes up here in the corner. So now we have our requisition number and it brings that name over. So again, that's just something very new about this platform. We're going to have to save. It's not happening in the background like it used to. Okay, so now items and service, that option is available. So we're going to hit add line. So we have two description fields, short description, detailed description. This was originally just description, but that was capped at 192 characters, not enough for a lot of what you all are typing in this area, especially for like least copiers. So short description is going to work for smaller items, furnish and deliver, reference quote number, or confirming order invoice. So in this case, let's go ahead and type on the actual quote number. Okay, there. Now, detailed description, multi-paragraph, so you can type as much as you need to. You can do a bulleted list, and both will show up on the purchase order and send to the supplier. The only difference is short descriptions required, detailed is not. If you can fit most of the information in the short description, that's perfectly fine. But there are situations where you're going to want to use that detailed description. All right, so let's move on. We're doing a non-catalog quote order here. So I'm just going to do quantity 1 because we're going to give us 1 quote. Other really nice thing here, for those that have dealt with the commodity codes, you had to hit the drop down, you had to search for more. Now this is doing a live search as you type. It's moving quite quickly. So let me just slow down there real quick. So I'm going to type web. You're going to get all these hits back. I'm going to keep typing. And then we have webcam. If you know the number, you can also key that in directly here. All right. And then we'll move on to our unit price. Now it says estimate cost, but it's actually the real cost of the item. Behind the scenes, this can actually flip to pushing out like a quick quote or solicitation in the system. We're not going to do that. So you're going to put the actual cost. And let me talk about this item, this product type here right now. It is product. There's a couple other options here. Usually it's just going to be product. If you're doing a shipping fee, you can select that. But by default, you can just leave it as product. Okay. Suggested supplier, same thing. You're going to know who your supplier is. Important to note here, while I can start typing the actual supplier I want, there's some nuance with that. So what I'm going to advise you all to do as much as possible when you're looking for your supplier, click into the field and then do see all. It's going to bring up a new window here. Now, some things to note about this screen. There's not going to be any on this list here. But if a supplier has a location that is discontinued, it's going to show up in that listing and this new listing we have open right now. And in that case, you're going to be able to select them and use them. But when you go to submit your requisition forward, you're going to get a blocking error message that says that supplier location cannot be used. So that's why we're going to drive you into this pop-up screen and actually double check the status. For example, Dell today in the conversion environment has about 5 or 7 different locations. Only a couple are actually active and usable. The rest are discontinued. There's many other suppliers in similar situations. Also, real quickly, if you use this listing before in the current platform, you'll note it's not saying if they're self-registered or state entered, nor is there any information about whether or not they receive orders electronically. So in those cases, we're going to really direct you back out to the eVA homepage before you sign in. Got it open. If you're not familiar with this list, don't even have to sign in. Transparency, and then come down to eVA vendor list. And this part of the platform isn't changing with the new system. And then you can search your supplier, excuse me, and then it's going to show the type, self versus state, and then whether or not they receive, accept the credit cards, accept orders electronically, and that type of information. So this list is still going to be very valuable. So let's go back into the requisition here. So once you know your supplier, we'll key in their name, we'll do search. And then in this case, they are active, and then we know they are self-registered. We're going to just hit this little checkbox right here. And that's going to bring them over to the supplier, the fulfillment supplier, and then the supplier contact. Suppliers can have multiple contacts in the system. It should default to one. And in some instances, there could be suppliers that you would select a certain contact, but in general, we're going to leave that alone to what it defaults. All right, so let's scroll down and talk about some other fields here. This contract field is grayed out, and we will not be leveraging that. If we have a contract number for you to key in, you're going to put it in that external contract number field. So I'm going to type one in. And that's where that'll key in, or whether it's JMU, UPC, or whatever it may be. There are comments at the line item level. Again, supplier visible, don't use these. Similar to the other one, it's very difficult to see that they exist here. Header comments, header attachments are the better option. Additional details, those are more information you can share. The internal comments would be here on the line item. Again, line item attachments also exist here. We're not going to use those. Part of the reason why is right now it says I can add a new document, and it'll let me go through the full process to add an attachment, but it will not save, and it's not going to warn me that it didn't. All right. So at this point, I could hit save and close and repeat the allocation process we did on the last one. But there is a different way you can do allocation. So we're going to hit save here. And a new field will display down here at the bottom. And this is that first warning message. This is a non-catalog requisition. Again, we're going to ignore it. It's a warning message, not a blocking error message. All right, so let's scroll on back down. And here's that allocation field we saw earlier. So just like last time. In this case, I know the number, so I'm keying those in. All right, so at this point, I can save and close now. And then if I do the allocations, that will show up from what we just did. Now, let's talk through attachments at the header level. So we're going to hit plus new document down here. And now this is where that difference is. Now I have to decide, is it supplier or internal? So let's do a supplier. Okay. One thing that's new is this document name. This will show up to the supplier in this category grouping. We'll see what that looks like here in a minute. Big change from the current platform. One, the file size limit has increased to 300 megabytes. It's a nice improvement. Also, we can add multiple attachments in one go. So for example, we'll just click here. It's going to pop up the File Explorer, and I can control select multiple attachments. And there they are. Now, if you don't want to do that, if you want to drag and drop, also an option. So let me bring that open. Also going to control click and drag over. When you see the green box, that means you can drop and it will attach. If I accidentally added things multiple times, I can just hit this little delete here. It's going to ask, do I want to? I'll say okay. And then save and close. And if we're going to scroll back down to make sure it actually attached, and there they are. So there's the documentation name. And if we hover over the icons, it'll say the exact document name, and we can actually download it from here as well. And then again, at this point, it says it's Supplier, but if this really needed to be internal, I'm going to have to delete it and re-upload. Or if I made a mistake, I can delete it. Or if I needed to add other attachments, maybe rename it, I can also do that here. There is a status. Always leave that as approved. Don't change it. It's just part of the system functionality. And of course, the summary is optional. The only thing required here is that documentation field. Didn't make any changes, so I'm just going to close that. Okay. So other big piece to note here is that if I have submitted this for approval and I realize I have made a mistake, let's say this actually needed to be $1,000 even, I'm off by a penny, or should have actually been $899.99. I cannot withdraw a requisition anymore. So you're actually going to have to contact your next approver or someone else in the approval flow through that workflow view and say, hey, can you reject it and send it back to me? We'll talk about that more here in a second, but just something to keep in mind. So for this example, let's say that Doug doesn't have a credit card for the sake of argument. So what we're going to do is come down to this workflow, preview, and Ad-Hoc. And then we're going to do the add friend button again. We can expand out and it's going to say Ad-Hoc approver. We're going to insert an approver. The nice thing about this listing, if you know someone's last name, so it's common last name Smith, you can actually type in a jmu.edu because behind the scenes, it's checking the email address and the name. In this case, I'm just going to select Katie in our office. Now, what I just typed here, this reason is going to show up on the previous screen, but it's not going to be communicated to Katie or whoever you select in this list, and it's not easily visible. So if you are adding someone in to the Ad-Hoc world to add their credit card, you're going to need to communicate with them some other way, whether it's a Teams message, an email, a phone call, going to talk to them, sending a carrier pigeon, whatever works best for you and them. Okay, so let me just save and close this. So that reason I typed is only going to be right here. So we're going to save and close this one more time. And if you needed to insert another Ad-Hoc approver at this point, you could, and it will go in that order. So again, let's just save and close. I'm going to go back into workflow to show what they would see if they just went into that initial screen. It's just going to say Ad-Hoc approver. That reason only exists in that additional area. They have to go in the Ad-Hoc approver area to see that reason you keyed in. So the best way to handle that, just a thought, is to use that supplier visible space. And just put a note. And then continue on with your department account code information as you normally would. That's also going to be clear if someone comes back to look at this to know why Katie or whoever that is on the requisition as an Ad-Hoc approver right away. Okay. All right. So at this point, let's go ahead and submit this for approval. Now, I talked about not being able to withdraw requisition anymore. So if I hit other actions, I actually see a cancel requisition button. And you might think, oh, awesome, I'll just cancel it. That's fine. Until this has generated a purchase order, cancel really means delete. And if you hit cancel at this stage, this requisition is gone forever, and I can't get that information back. So again, if you make a mistake, you're gonna have to get the requisition rejected back to you to make those modifications. It's standard functionality in the system. We've brought it up multiple times, and that's something we're not gonna have fixed for a good while with the new platform. All right, so we now have a non-catalog requisition that we've submitted onward. So let's go back to our eVA logo here, and we're gonna move on to a confirming order. So I'm gonna go to procurement, same thing as last time. Now there is a wonderful create confirming order button here, and I'm gonna advise you very strongly to avoid it at all costs. And the reason for that is that if you go that direction, you cannot change the type. It is locked to a confirming order. So if for whatever reason you make a mistake and it's not a confirming order, you're locked at a confirming order. You'd have to copy the requisition over and then change it, or delete it and start over. So as much as possible, procurement, create requisition. All right, so do our name again. All right, organization we'll leave alone. So here in the type now, we can modify this, and we will select confirming order. Quick note, DPS, administrative request, standard across the system. We will not be using those, but because it's a statewide system, some of those options are in there, even if they don't apply to you all directly. So confirming order. And again, now that it's a confirming order, I can go back and change it to a purchase if I need to. All right, PO category, back to our normal items here. And we're just going to say this is supplies, non-technology. Again, real quick, because I kind of breezed past this on the last one, the option to add items is not present yet. That only happens after the save here. Okay, so now items and services are an option. I'm going to go down here and add our line. Okay. I'm not going to do the detailed description in this case. We're going to set our quantity to 1. I'm just going to say recycled office supplies, and then we'll do our estimated cost here. In this case, I know that hyphen dash dash is the actual supplier, so I'm just going to select them and not go through the see all process. Okay, and then we don't have a contract number for this, and we're not going to do anything else with the actual item. So we're just going to save and close it this time. And then we're going to do our mass selection here, just the one, and we're going to set our allocations this way. And again, you can do either option. If you want to do it within the line, you're more than welcome to. And then again, apply and close. And now all that information has been set. You would do your JMU use only. Now, in this case, similar to the credit card process earlier, if you need someone to review the requisition or to just approve it for other reasons, you would follow the ad hoc process the exact same way we did last time. So in this case, I'll just select myself. And then, so we'll just put some reason, maybe they need to look at it for budget, or maybe you want them to just review something else on there, or just to be aware that the requisition is moving forward. But note, if you add them here, they will have to take action and approve it. Okay. So again, that will be there. We will save and close. And then at this point, we can submit forward for approval. All right, moving pretty quickly here. So go back to the eVA logo. We'll go back to the navbar, procurement, create requisition. We're going to go ahead and do our ad hoc example now. So we're going to give it a name. Make sure you're putting the supplier's name in the title, that name field. Okay. Again, organization will leave alone. Big change here. You have to do a confirming order for an ad hoc. It may not be a confirming order, but to have the option to ad hoc or to use an unregistered supplier on the new platform, it has to be a confirming order. So let's go ahead and select that. If it's truly not a confirming order, make sure we're noting that in the comments, and we'll come back and do that here in a few moments. So again, RO1, and let's say we're also getting additional supplies, not technology. And then again, we'll save. Okay, so add line item. This part is not new so far. Okay, we'll leave the detailed description alone. Again, quantity 1. Go up to our unit price. Okay, now here's where things are very different from current eVA as well. Right now, you're very familiar with having to enter a lot of information, tax ID number, contact, a phone number. To do a unregistered supplier ad hoc in the new platform, you're going to select this little checkbox right here. And this is, again, only visible if it's confirming order. So we'll select it. This is the only field you will be required to enter in these situations. Just the supplier name. So I'm going to key that in. Now, important to note, as we know today, we're hoping this will change, but I'm not certain it will at go live. What you key here will not show up on the actual purchase order. It's just going to say unregistered supplier. So it's going to be imperative that we put it in the name, and something else I'm going to have you do is put that either in the detailed description, or you can put it in the short description. Make sure you're putting their name within the line item on the short description, detailed description, and in the requisition name. Because that's the only way it's going to show up on the purchase order. So at this point, we will save and close. And then let's check the box here, and we'll set our allocations normally. Apply and close. This is also, keep in mind for your fiscal tech, if you are not your own fiscal tech, anything you can do to help make this more clear and apparent is going to be very helpful. And then department account code information there. At this point, we are ready to go, and we can hit submit for approval. All right. Now, something else we could have done is saved it and have came back to it later, much like you can today in the current platform. All right, so let me quickly go back and show a couple of other non-requisition creation items. So once you sign in to the platform, if you have items you need to take action on, they're going to show up in your to-do list. If the supplier does not receive orders electronically, you're no longer going to be the last person to need to approve it. It's not going to be as apparent anymore. So again, that's another reason why we're encouraging you to reach out to the supplier to make sure they've gotten it. You'll still be able to use that public vendor list to see if they're signed up for it, but that's not a guarantee, especially as we transition to the new platform. Now, this to-do list, Doug would have gotten an email saying he has items he needs to approve. And he can click from this list right here, or upper right-hand corner, your name, my to-do list, and there's a couple different items in here. If they click on the requester name, that's the individual that submitted it to them, it's just going to open information about them, their phone number, their email address, whatever's set up in their account profile. You actually want to open the requisition to look at it. This is the requisition number, so there's an implied REQ number here. Or you can actually just look at the title here. It's called object right now. So let's click into this one here. And in this case, we've followed that note process to let Doug know, hey, add your SPCC onto the requisition. So to do that process, once it's ready for you to approve, I'm going to go to the P card area. And it's already on here. But if it wasn't, or let's just clear it, or if we needed to clear it out for whatever reason, you would just hit the X there. And then we'll do Piker. And again, we're going to make sure we hit save. Now, we have to approve it for it to move forward. Just adding the card is not going to push it to the next approval step. So we'd have to hit approve here. And once we do that, there's no longer a required comments area or an optional comments area. It's just going to move right on forward. And then again, at this point, I can see where it's going next. So that ad hoc approvals happened, and now it's gone to the procurement office to review. So we'll close out of that one. And let's go to the next one here. And this is just a regular approval. No need to add the small purchase credit card. So there is a reject button. So if I had miskeyed something on this one, or the individual, and we needed to send it back to them, we would hit reject here. There's a little asterisk here to warn that this is a required field. Be clear, concise, and appropriate. This will not transmit to the vendor, but what you type here is public record, so just keep that in mind. Okay, and then if we're going to reject it, we will confirm, and then that will go back to the individual that submitted it. Okay. So if you need to add a small purchase credit card, you're going to go back up to the name and then my profile. And in this case, Doug already has one on here. To remove it, we'd hit the trash can icon and then OK to actually delete it. We needed to add a new one. Same process, the label. New difference here is that you can add spaces and special characters. That's not restricted anymore like it is in the current platform. And you'll key this information. Once you hit save and close, that card is available for use right away in the requisitions. It's a great benefit, especially if your card has fraud on it and has to be canceled, or if you get a new card, you're not having to deal with that overnight upload process anymore. All right, now, a couple other items to make note of. So if I submit a requisition, there's a couple ways I can see where it's at and what's going on with it. Where's my order status? There's all these different items here. It's a scroll bar, and you can kind of navigate around. Another way to see where your requisitions are, procurement, browse requisitions. The big change is by default, it is not just going to show you your requisitions. So to see just your requisition, select my requests and then search. And then from there, we can just click on the REQ number and then open them right up. In this case, we will go back. I'm going to scroll down to one that's actually been ordered. And I can note that with this status right here. So we're going to go into the REQ. And once it has been ordered, I'm going to expand out the menu here. There is a new tab here with orders. So from within this, I can actually pull down a PDF version of the purchase order. So big difference. You're not having to hit print and then printing it or doing save as PDF in Chrome or Firefox anymore. It will just download a PDF directly for you. Now this is an unregistered supplier. So let's hit this down and I'll show you what that looks like. Not finalized yet. Our custom purchase order terms have not been added just yet as well. So just to give you a sense, unregistered suppliers, what's going to list there, not Madison Marketplace or whatever supplier you keyed in. And then the purchase order terms and conditions. Again, those will come in later. And that address, of course, is not what was actually there because I didn't get to key that information in. So let's close that out. And if I wanted to go into the purchase order, I could do so from here as well. And then for whatever reason, if I needed to cancel this purchase order, can't do a change order on the ad hoc here. You would do that from within the purchase order, and that's different. You need to do a change order or to cancel a purchase order that has to be done from the actual purchase order, no longer in the actual requisition. However, I can't duplicate or copy the purchase order. I have to go back to the requisition to have that option to duplicate. So it's just some nuance there. You have to go to different places to take different actions on it. All right. So let's go back to procurement and let's say I actually just want to browse my orders this time. So procurement, and we'll go down to browse orders. By default, what we believe is that this will not be, again, restricted to just yours. It will be other purchase orders in your organization. So your division, and there's not a quick little checkbox here to just see your orders. We've asked for that to be added at a later date. So you'll go to that funnel icon and we're going to go down to the requester. So then from here, you can just type your last name, your email, select yourself, and then do search. And then it will show your purchase orders from there. And you can, of course, just delete out that filter. Also important to note, this external code, there's not any converted purchase orders in this environment. But if you have an EP or PCO number that you have created today in current eVA and you're searching for it in the new platform, you're going to key that in here in the external code field, not in the keyword field. And that's the only thing that external code is for. And that's very similar for the browse requisitions. It's called reference number. That is the existing today PR number. That's the only thing that will go there. Okay, it's a lot of information. So I'm going to actually stop our recording.